Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining, jumping back in our session today. My name is Ashley Ellerby and I'm the Business Solutions Specialist for Gordon Food Service, and I will be the moderator for today's session. Today we will hear from a panel of leaders in the restaurant industry who will discuss some of their approaches to current issues and the ever-changing landscape that we know the industry is facing right now. Before I allow each panelist to introduce themselves, there are a couple housekeeping notes that I need to cover. So just a reminder, it's a webinar, so you can hear and hopefully see us, but we cannot hear or see you. So if you do have a question at any point during this session, on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see a box with a questions tab. Just open that up, type in any question that you have. And throughout this panel session today, I will stop and make sure that the panel hears your questions so that we can get those answered. If we don't get to your question or for some reason we run out of time, no worries. We are recording this webinar, and so we will be sending out the recording as well as following up with each of you on your questions that you have. All right. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel. We'll start with Dr. Emily Knight with the Texas Restaurant Association.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you could, I guess, dial in today or use your computer to get to us, but I'm really happy to be here. I'm sure I know some of you just through the last, I guess, 65 days of this crisis. I'm fortunate I lead the Texas Restaurant Association. We've been advocating on your behalf for long before the crisis, I think 86 years now, but the crisis has really brought the attention that our voices can be loud when we come together. As the second largest employer now, having lost about 700,000 jobs, we know that we're going to have to continue the recovery and the fight. And through that, we have our Texas Restaurant Association Education Foundation, and we do all of the training in high schools across. And so our hope is that we continue to keep those individuals through the crisis engaged to come out to be great owners like the gentlemen that are going to introduce themselves after me. So I'm happy to be here and happy to share some of what it's been like and maybe even what's coming down the pike.
Thank you, Emily. And then we have Colin McKenzie with Mackenzie's Barbecue Burgers.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. My name is Colin McKenzie, Vice President of Mackenzie's Barbecue and Burgers. I'm extremely excited to answer some questions and to provide some insight to what we've been experiencing out here on the front lines, but I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Colin. And then Philipp Sitter, President of the Kings Group.
Hi, I'm Philip. I'm founder of VIP Insiders, which is a technology company. We build rewards and loyalty solutions for customers like Colin, like a Starbucks rewards for independent restaurants of all sizes. And I'm also the president of the Kings Group, which we own King's Beer Garden, King's Beer House, and Egg House Gourmet. So I get to see things on the client side. I also get to see things as a restaurant owner in my restaurant. So I appreciate you guys having me today.
Great. All right. So let's just jump right in. I know that either any of you can kind of jump right in and start to answer this, but I think the really pointed question that everyone's wanting to know is, what has been your biggest challenge when reopening your restaurant?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that we've just never experienced anything like this before. And just being open throughout COVID-19, the biggest issues for us have been by far managing our inventory levels, retaining our staff, and then looking at new ways to launch revenue streams to make up for the loss of sales. So that's been our biggest issues during this time.
So
Yeah,
have you been open the entire time, Colin?
Yes. So when we had the stay-at-home order, we were allowed to remain open for takeout, to go, curbside pickup, and delivery. So we did remain open, and thankfully our business model was already set up well for to go and delivery. We already had several third-party delivery apps going. So while we did see a loss in revenue, we probably did a little better than the average restaurant just because we were already set up to do to go and delivery.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, same thing for us. You know, we have large restaurants that seat over 400, that are really weekend restaurants. And then we have Egg House Gourmet, which is a fast casual breakfast, right? So our fast casual breakfast was down 10%. And our large restaurants, the ones that you come with your family and friends and birthdays, we were down 80 to 90%, right? So, Egg House at that point, again, like Colin's concept, was already positioned for that. So if you're already positioned for it and the customer already knew of your restaurant going into, hey, this restaurant I ordered to-go food from, I think that the positioning was fine. But for King's Beer House, King's Beer Garden, you certainly don't really consider schnitzel and sausages and beer and pretzels for something, to go, right? And so it took, to Colin's point, it took us to develop new revenue streams, right? And so we started looking at, okay, how do we fight back and claw our way back? And how do we position ourselves into the customer's mind? So one thing that we did a little different is we actually spent more time on ads and we spent more time on marketing than we did when we were closed. I mean, when we were open in the last month, right? And then so why we did that is because we wanted to remain top of mind, not only to position ourselves for to-go, but also positioning ourselves for top of mind at reopening. And so it's been interesting to see the different concepts. So whoever's listening out there today, I'm sure if you've had that restaurant that had a lot of seating that wasn't well positioned for to-go, you probably saw that 70 to 90% decline. And then managing your staff, like Colin said as well. We all know, Emily, and everyone's, lobbying for us right now because of the PPP program. And a lot of your employees and our employees don't want to go back to work. They're making too much money, with unemployment. And I'm sure we'll get into what a tough conversation that is to tell your employees, hey, if you don't come in, we're going to have to report you, and that's been difficult as well.
Yeah, I think, to kind of tag along with that, the next question is really about like, how do you communicate with your staff if it's a hard conversation you're having with the ones that don't want to come back because they maybe don't feel safe or they're making more money not working, as well as how did you communicate with the staff that you can't bring back if before you're at full capacity and you just don't need all of those people. So what has been the messaging that you guys have sent?
Yeah, so I mean, thankfully for us, like I said, our concept was set up good for it to go in delivery, and we made it a point early on that we were going to do our absolute best to retain as much staff as possible. And fortunately, we only had to let go of 3 people, and since dining has reopened, we brought all 3 of those people back. So we're at our full staff. Thankfully, we haven't had to deal with a lot of the unemployment issues that might come up. The unemployment that we're getting now are from, staff that worked a year and a half ago, actually. So that's an interesting thing to look at. But, the staff that we have currently, we're extremely happy that we were able to retain everyone. And
yeah, that's great. What about you, Philip? Emily, go ahead.
Yeah, no, maybe I'll just jump in a little bit because I think what Colin and Philip are bringing up is sort of twofold, right? So about the 20th was when we officially had dining room shut down in March. And then the Paycheck Protection Program, part of the CARES Act, which was really a program, I think it was trillions of dollars that had to be unpacked overnight. It was passed very quickly, which is very uncommon. And when the rules came out, it was really about some of the guidance that the SBA or Small Business Administration and Treasury wrote in. We're not actually even part of the legislation, but we found out very quickly that it was going to be difficult for our restaurants because now their dining rooms are closed. For many of them, it's 80% or more. As Colin said, many weren't real, and Philip said it's not even set up to do delivery or takeout. And I don't think people understand you don't just turn your restaurant overnight when you have one phone line into a takeout and delivery organization. So I think what we found is that a lot of these workers were let go immediately because there was no opportunity. You also had all the loss of inventory of perishable goods that had to be, we didn't at the point know when we were going to be open again. And a lot of those employees went on to unemployment. The CARES Act sort of is a twofold, right? There's this deadline of June 30th to spend the money on payroll, 75%, but you're only operating at 50%. And because of some of the guidance and guidelines, you can't even get to 50% because of the table spacing. And so you can't bring those people back. And when you do bring them back or ask to bring them back, they're making $2,400 more a month plus unemployment. And, and I have to always put the employees, sit in their shoes too. And if there's a lot of uncertainty and you're used to making a tipped wage, you don't know what that landscape is going to be like, you may indeed just say, you know what, I'm out. But to their point, that now has become a conversation with the Texas Workforce Commission, and one that's put our restaurant owners and managers in a really tough spot. Because if somebody says, I don't want to come back and take care of my family better here, you have the opportunity to actually file a grievance, essentially a complaint with the Workforce Commission, and they can lose their benefits. And so it's not a win for anyone.
Right.
And we already had a labor shortage before this started. So I think this is new territory, and the role the association's playing is, believe it or not, we talked to employers all day on how to have that employee conversation. Ones like Colin that were able to keep those employees, keep them as part of the family. We know some of our restaurants that furloughed have brought them back. Brinker just brought back a massive number of employees. But there's many that are going to sit on the sidelines for quite a while because they just can't get staff. If you stop in some fast food restaurants in particular right now, or mid-scale, there's sometimes 2 employees, which is just almost unfair to begin with. And so this personnel, this labor, I think, is one of the biggest crises that it's going to be lasting as we continue, because we also lost a lot of workers to other industries, like the grocery and retail and delivery and other companies. In the crisis, it's going to be hard to get them back.
Yeah.
I would agree. We do actually have a question. Looks like we have someone joining from out of state. So recognizing Texas is ahead of where we are in Illinois, do you expect carryout to continue to be the largest part of your business strategy? Starting Friday, parts of Illinois are opening for outdoor dining. What was your biggest challenge reopening inside dining and outdoor dining?
So if you go to our blog, blog.vipinsiders.com, we actually surveyed a little over 8,000. Now the survey is about 10,000 real restaurant customers. And one of the questions was to those restaurant customers, and these are restaurant customers from not just Texas, but even Illinois, California, Nevada, Florida, all over the nation. And one of those questions was about curbside. I think it was like a little over 85% of customers still want the use of curbside. So I don't see curbside going anywhere anytime quick. So the way that you want to take a look at curbside is it's here to stay. And how do you make your curbside delivery even better? Because it's not, if you want it to be temporary, the data shows that the customers want it to stay, right? And so we just have to take the customer side on it and say, okay, how do we make a better curbside experience? And again, we have a lot of questions on that survey, really important questions about really the whole customer experience from top to bottom. And that if you go to our website, vipinsiders.com, you go to the blog, and it says under marketing tips, and it'll show you all the results, and you can download that survey so you can take a look at that with your management team.
And Philip, I'll just add one point, because I know Illinois well. I was in Illinois before I came here, and yeah, I'm sorry to see what's happening in Illinois in a way, because the governor's opening some and then the mayors are coming in and closing, and we lobbied very hard. I think it was one of the best things we did as an association to get one set of rules across the whole state, and any order is superseded by the governor's order. So the governor's order supersedes any order. So that's helped us. But one of the things that's been very clear is Illinois as well, we passed curbside alcohol to go. That has been extraordinarily popular. That is something that, as you think about your business in Illinois, that you're going to want to have the legislature as a permanent option, because in any of the survey data we have, consumers are more willing to go to takeout, where they can also get an alcoholic beverage, which was very surprising to us. But we knew that we're seeing a lot of volume, but now we have the consumer demand to match it. And as Philip said, many of our dine-in restaurants now are actually still doing more curbside and carry out than they are in dine-in, even though their dining room is open. And so I think it absolutely is here to stay. I don't know what the mix will eventually be. I don't think anyone knows what that mix will be, but I think that we've unleashed something for the consumer that's not going to go backwards. I don't know, Colin, if you have that, because you've had a lot of delivery the whole time.
Right. So, like I said before, we've been doing delivery, been part of the third party. We've used the third party delivery apps. One thing we talked about, with trying to retain our staff and opening up revenue streams, was taking some of our delivery internally and doing it through our website, or taking a delivery order to the phone. So we started doing that, and that's been a question that's been asked of us: is once this is all done, will your delivery go away? And my kind of point is, well, we've already done the hard work of setting it up and setting the procedure in place. Absolutely not. We want to have options for our customers to get Mackenzie's the way they want it, whether that's dining in, picking it up, having a no contact delivery, or a curbside pickup. We want our customers to have options so that they can get their food the best way that they feel comfortable.
We have another question that came in, Emily, this one more directed to you. How can a Texas Restaurant Association support operators in addressing the return to work wage issue? Are we progressing to a higher wage as a result of the higher unemployment support?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we know that it ends the end of July. That's when this part of the CARES Act is due to end. The HEROES Act was passed last Friday by the House, and it's moving forward. I believe that's where the negotiation will start with the Senate. The House is saying they want to continue this additional unemployment through the end of the year, and the Senate is drawing a red line in the sand and saying we need to get people back to work. That's not the best way to get people back to work. So we're very engaged in those discussions right now. We feel like a job today is certainly worth more than a potential job in 6 or 9 months, and that's the conversation we're having. We did a number of webinars with the Texas Workforce Commission to arm our employers with what they can do. And we're also working very closely now with the governor's office on shared work programs. So the shared work program has been around forever, but it's sort of very antiquated, and it takes up to sometimes 4 weeks to get approval, and that's going to be long past when you need it. So we're trying to accelerate that and get some of the red tape out where you could bring employees back and maybe you only use them for 40% and 60% is on unemployment. And it seems like a nice win for some of our smaller restaurants. And so we're in those conversations right now. So we're very engaged in this. I will tell you, it's something I hear about every day is the difficulty in getting employees back. And so we would be hard pressed to support an extension of this past the July date, which is already law and can be changed.
Thank you. We do have another question, and we're going to touch on this topic anyway. So this one is, let's see, I've been a long time food service employee. I love dining out and supporting customers. Recently, an experience where I saw several huge issues with handling of masks and gloves. What steps have you guys taken to manage PPE throughout the shifts?
So I had a similar experience, a well-known restaurant that I liked by my house. I went there and I went there to dine, because I've been, dining out the day that we're allowed to. So I've been dining out like crazy, you know, part of for pleasure and part of supporting the industry. You've got to, right? So
Yeah.
I go out and good restaurant, great restaurant. And I go there and, I started realizing how hyper aware I am of cleanliness procedures. So I'm typically not that type of person that's super worried. I'm not, I'm not wearing the mask all the time, so I'm pretty on average, right? I'm not either way. But when I go there and I saw their cleanliness procedures and like it really made me hyper aware of it. And so the first thing I would say for you as an owner, manager, food service employee, go to a restaurant and see and feel how it feels like to be a customer. Sometimes we forget that we're actually customers as well, and our experience is their experience, right? We can't just look at it with operators' eyes and say, oh, well, this and this, you got to take a look at it that way, right? And so when I did that, it really made it clear to me how important it is. And so the things that we have is we have full transparency with our sign, letting them know about all of the different procedures that we're doing, very similar to the what is it called, Emily? The Texas
Restaurant Promise. Yep.
Exactly. So very similar to that, just a couple additionals. So right when you walk in, you kind of see that everyone's wearing gloves, everyone's wearing masks, and then we're taking the temperature of the staff, and that's our inner loop restaurant, right? And we're taking care of all the procedures, sanitizing, disposable menus, disposable brunch menus, doing the whole thing, anything you can think of. But what's strange is our suburban restaurants, they're actually anti-masks, right? So we do all of this, and then we have our customers complaining that we have the mask on. And so, what we realize is we can't treat each restaurant as a whole. We have to treat each restaurant per the community that it's in. So we still have all the standard procedures, but we're not going above those procedures in our restaurant, for example, in League City. So I think the biggest thing is figuring out whatever your restaurant, your community wants, and just staying incredibly consistent.
Yes.
Because if you have 3 guys with a mask and 5 guys without a mask, I think there's something wrong with the guys with the mask. Either no mask or all masks, right? That's number one. And just having complete consistency through your restaurant, but also understanding your community. Because if I pushed on all those standards to our League City store, we probably wouldn't have customers. And so it's really interesting, but that's the way we're looking at it, is just absolute consistency in whatever procedures we decide to do, and making those procedures very visual. So I actually have, when you walk in, we have everything like where you can see us cleaning and sanitize. It's almost like a show, right? Someone comes on, 3 people come and sanitize the whole table in our Heights restaurant, because I don't want anyone to feel as though that we're not sanitizing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing too with us, if I could just jump in real fast, you know, when dining came back open, we'd already been talking about what dining would look like for us, because we are a barbecue concept, and we have all our sides were self-serve, our burgers were, you know, make your own burger bar. So we'd already been talking about, you know, when dining comes back, do we really want, you know, those items to be self-serve? And then, you know, of course, the recommendations came out not to do that, but we'd already made the decision that we were not going to do any self-serve items at the restaurant, just, you know, due to the current climate of things. And really, when I talk to other restaurant owners and restaurant leaders in the industry, you know, we talk about, is that something that the industry has changed forever? You know, will self-serve come back at all? I don't know. So right now, you know, and it was a really easy operational change for us because we already did a lot of to-go and whatnot. So we were used to getting the sides, making the burgers for to-go and pick up. Now we just do it for dine-in as well. So that was a really easy change for us, but an important step, I think, into keeping our customers safe.
Kind of to piggyback on that, a couple questions come in around this topic. So this question comes from someone that's in Michigan. They said, has primarily carry-out service changed your menu composition? Because here in Michigan, we developed our seasonal summer menu to hold better in a to-go box, which has somewhat dampened our creativity. And then we had another question around for takeout and curbside. Are you packaging beverages or using ready-to-drink options? How are you guys handling condiments? So kind of around the menu, I guess the creativity with the menu items you're offering, and then how are you packaging some of those condiments and beverages?
Well, for us, I mean, Philip probably be a better person to answer that question, but just for us, we don't really do a lot of menu changes. We're a very simple barbecue concept. We have a large menu, so there's not a lot of seasonal items on there. We've started dabbing and possibly bringing on some limited time offers in the future, but you know, we have a pretty set menu. It's been that way since 1995. It's worked for us, and we expect it to continue to work for us. So when it comes to seasonal menu items, and we don't serve alcohol right now, we are working on getting our beer and wine license for one of our locations. We plan on doing beer to go, but that's kind of where we're at menu-wise right now.
Yeah, we're reconcepting all of our restaurants' menus. So with Egg House, again, it was already really well positioned for that. You know, just recently we started looking at other to-go packaging, because the sad truth is that when you use third-party deliveries, not only the 30% that they take, which I'm sure everyone can feel my pain on that, so I don't even want to get into that discussion. But
no, I'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, just absolute insanity there, you know. But besides the insanity of what they charge, it's the insanity of how long it takes to get the food, right? So, you know, your favorite driver or Uber Eats driver can do multiple pickups. So gone are the days where they pick up your restaurant and deliver it to your restaurant customer. They go to my restaurant, they go to your restaurant, they go to 3 other restaurants, and then they circle all the way back to get that first customer. So now if you look at Uber Eats, you can actually pay for $2 upgrade priority. You can do standard. So your food quality, right? Your food quality is very questionable at best when it gets delivered to your customer, right? And at the end of the day, they're not thinking Uber Eats, they're thinking our restaurant, you know, our restaurant's food. And so that's why the reconcepting of the menu, also with the upcoming meat supplies, you know, we're taking our menu, we're going to keep a limited menu, but we're also going to go a little bit more specialized in our menu concepts. So for example, we're a German American concept, so we're going a little bit more German during this time. And the reason being is because we want to specialize in something, you know, for more of a marketing appeal rather than just do everything, because the place you want to get your barbecue, go to Mackenzie's. If you want schnitzel and sausages, you do King's. If you want steak, well, I'm guessing you're going to grill it at home. I'm curious how fine dining is going to do when it comes to, getting a steak, right? Everyone's going to the grocery store. I'm not going to pay $60 for a filet that I could cook at home. So I'm curious about that. But overall, we are definitely taking a look at our menu, limiting it, and also testing it. We're tons of different tests that we've done on to-go packaging, because what I want to do is time my food to see how you're going to taste it 45 minutes from now. And also I want to time my food to see how the reheatability is, because I don't want to serve you something on our menu that if you get, you'll never order from us again, right? So it's been a big focus for us.
Great, thank you. Another question came in, Emily, this one's for you. I think you maybe touched on it at the very beginning, but says, can we get an update on the 6-foot spacing rule? Most of us are limited on expanding our seating until this rule is changed.
Yeah, we agree. So we actually are just about done with our proposal. I think the restaurant promise really was the guide for Lieutenant Governor's task force and then the governor's strike force. And then we took the final plan and re-upped the restaurant promise, and then actually stepped into the bar space for the first time. Our bar colleagues had lost a tremendous number of jobs. They had been closed with no revenue for, 60 days, I think, when they finally could be opened. And so we stepped in on their behalf and got the bars reopened last Friday. That's probably a conversation for a different day about how that went. I had lots of calls with police and fire throughout the weekend, which is interesting in my role. But I think that we are going back for the next phase to reduce table spacing to 3 feet, period, or the use of partitions. So we are about done with our proposal. We'll go back to his team, and we've worked really closely with. They know that at 50% with the 6-foot spacing, a lot of our restaurants couldn't get past 35 or 40%. They just can't. And so if we're going to bring people in and really want to increase occupancy, we can't go with percentages. We've got to now reduce that table spacing. So our hope is that the first week of June, we will get that indication. He likes to go 2 weeks. We can see the impact of the increase. Right now we're celebrating that we're seeing a lot of declines in our numbers, hospitalization rates, but we just went to that next level. We had a Memorial Day holiday where you probably saw a lot of activity and not a lot of social distancing. And so I think he's going to want to see in his team, let's see the numbers continue to decrease, and then we'll go to that next level. But of all the states that, we have, many of my colleagues aren't even open yet. We're progressing very nicely through these hurdles. And so our hope is that they're very aware, the governor and his team, that we can't keep 6 feet of spacing. There'd be no sense in increasing our capacity because nobody can move. And so, yeah, we're working real hard on that. And I know that they are very up for that conversation, which is good.
That is great. Another question came in. How are you getting feedback from customers on the quality of the food that is being delivered from the third-party services? Are you hearing feedback from your customers directly or on social media? How is that working?
All those third-party providers have a review capability. You just have to log into your admin panel and take a look at those. So for me, part of my role is we look at that every week. For example, on Uber Eats, it shows you your downtime. It shows you how many orders you missed. It shows which items get the highest rated stars, all these sort of things, right? So it's just taking the time to review those things. And look, it is necessary to review it. The last thing we need with restaurants is something else to do. I get that. I'm a big proponent of that. I understand that. But at the end of the day, we have to manage our business accordingly. And if it's third parties, then we're going to have to get the feedback. And the feedback, again, is all in your admin panel from DoorDash, from Uber Eats. You just have to take a look at it. And it really does have to be part of your management meeting from now on, right? You have to look at what I look at my downtime especially. And anytime we're down, I call, or I look at the end of the week and I say, hey, why were we down 45 minutes on Tuesday? Right? Because at the end of the day, that is what, for our breakfast concept especially, that's doing about 30 to 40% of our volume through third parties right now. So, it's very necessary to add that to your manager meetings, in my opinion.
Yeah. The interesting thing that I found during getting feedback from customers on the third party services is anytime that we've got negative feedback, whether it be through like a phone call or email, something that directly the customer reached out because they were really upset about something that happened. Most of the time that the reason that they started reading up the whole, what it originated from was either it took too long to get there, or it took too long to get there and my food was cold, or the driver didn't follow my instructions or whatever the case may be. And the most interesting thing is that one, they always attribute that to the third-party delivery service. They usually are very understandable on our side that we can't control those things, but what we always do is we just try to get either some fresh food made and brought to them immediately, give them a credit, because even though we can't necessarily control some of those third-party items, it's still our brand on the line. So we want to make sure that we still take care of those customers, whether, like I said, us bringing some fresh food to them, or issuing a new order, or issuing a credit, whatever the case may be, just to take care of our customers.
And the only other thing that I would recommend real quickly that's been a big difference for us is we don't let them just grab an order. Someone has to check them out, because they have a real tendency of walking in, seeing James, grabbing James and leaving, and there's 3 James orders available. So now we make them show us their phone, show us the order, we take a look at that, and I actually have an expo just for that, for my breakfast concept, because we do significant volume with that. And so again, we're fighting the good fight with these people, especially third parties, but we have to understand what we're up against. So we want to make sure that our quality is there. We want to make sure that we're checking out the orders. We want to make sure we have that second expo available, because I want you to continue to reorder, right? At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And if they have a bad experience, they probably won't reorder in that case.
Very true. This was a topic that we were planning to discuss. So a question came in regarding supply chain. So with the increase in the cost of goods, what are you doing to stay nimble and pass on prices to customers and maintain your profitability? Are you seeing any pushback from customers and price increases?
Yeah, so this week we actually suspended all of our daily specials temporarily due to the increase in prices. Now, being a Texas barbecue, briskets our bread and butter, and we saw our brisket prices triple. So that was huge for us. And really just across the board, we've seen a price increase. So just getting rid of the daily special, still having those menu items available, but just not at the discounted price they were. We expect that to help us just weather this storm. The other thing we've done is we've actually removed our whole briskets for sale. That customers can still buy brisket by the pound, but we're just not selling it as a whole brisket, which will help us when it comes to profitability.
Yeah, maybe I'll just jump in on this whole sort of meat crisis. We've been in a lot of talks with the governor's office, because we have, two problems. 1, costs are skyrocketing. 2, in some cases, we can't get product into restaurants. And 3, you have a growing sort of food insecure areas across Texas because of that. And so when you have grocery stores now limiting, we had to kind of shift the supply chain from grocery stores back into restaurants. As the U.S. Farm Bureau and now the Texas Farm Bureau, who we're partnered with, is we've got plenty of animal. It's just putting it through the process. And so I think one of the things Governor Abbott's done with the strike force teams is sending the strike force teams into places like Amarillo and getting everyone tested, getting everything sanitized, and trying to get people back to work. The problem is it's Texas, it's Arkansas, it's Iowa, it's Nebraska. And so in some cases, you have these plants that are down at 50% capacity or brought down for 3 days. At the same time, all these restaurants are opening across the nation, and it's just creating a bottleneck. And we're deeply concerned about these price increases. We think what we've been told is it could be as late as end of July that we're going to see these kind of price increases. So here you have sort of a labor shortage. You don't have the volume you had. You have your same rent and mortgage and expenses to run your place, and now your food cost is going to go up. And if you're making maybe an 8 to 10% margin and your food cost just went up 15%, you can do the math. And so it feels like it's just one more hit. And so we're just telling all of our restaurants to work with their suppliers, work with Gordon Food Service, make sure you understand what the long term looks like from their visibility. Keep your menu very brief if possible. We have a lot of restaurants that are going to market pricing, which is interesting. Having been raised in New England, right? You'd always go in and have to ask, how much is the shrimp? How much is the lobster? It's not something we often do in other types of concepts, but we are seeing that start to get rolled out quite a bit. And even in a place maybe like Colin's, where that fluctuation you can add $1 or $2. We do have disposable menus now as a requirement or a protocol guideline, and that gives you a little more flexibility. But we are definitely seeing exactly what Colin said, which is people are eliminating specials, in some cases going to market pricing, going to dynamic pricing if needed. And really that relationship with a company like Gordon's is so important right now to plan out what the next 4 to 6 weeks look like, because it also could hit poultry, eggs, it could hit butter, and we're starting to get a report of what's coming. But right now protein is really tough. Really tough. And I don't know, Philip, if you want to add anything, but I mean, I think this is one that concerns me just because it's right now in an immediate pain point. It's not something that's going to come down the line later.
Philip, did you want to add anything to that, or they
No,
pretty much covered it?
yeah. Same thing. Limited menu. Taking a look, being a little bit more creative on those. Obviously, we sell pork with the schnitzels and sausages and stuff like that. So, and then with the breakfast concept, it's eggs and so forth. And again, I think it's realizing what type of customer base that you have, really going all in on what your concept is, and kind of start shaving off the things that you're not. Obviously we have pizzas and burgers, like start shaving those things down. And we do have a steak night in one of our concepts, and we did raise the price from $15 to $18. We had no issues with it. So.
And one thing I'll just add real fast too is, and why I say this, we did this, we got rid of the specials this week. So that started on Monday, and we're only on Wednesday now. And surprisingly, the feedback from our customers has been positive. They understand. We haven't got any negative feedback yet, in which I think, customers are going out to other restaurants, they're going to the grocery stores, they're seeing it everywhere. So I wouldn't, if I owned another restaurant, I would not be afraid to do a temporary price increase or market price or whatever the suggestions that we've talked about,
But I would be very transparent about it. I think that's the one suggestion. I think where we've seen restaurants go wrong is that they just say a COVID markup. Don't do a COVID markup. That just, it makes you feel like, especially if you've lost your job, or the thing about COVID is the whole world was impacted in some way. And so everyone is in this crisis in some form or fashion. So that just feels very punitive, instead of saying that there's been a shortage in meat processing because there's a lot of people that are ill and therefore I have to help. It's a very different conversation with your customer than just tagging $2 on every order as a COVID charge. I wouldn't recommend that. We definitely have gotten some consumer calls about restaurants that have done that, and just be very open. I think Colin said it best. There's never been a better time to talk to your customer because they're learning and you're learning. It's a whole new world out there.
And I'll piggyback off that. So on our side, for VIP Insiders, what we do is we help restaurants with loyalty rewards, build them technology so to communicate with their customer. And both of them are 100% right. Transparency in marketing is absolute key. And you may feel like, I don't want to let my customers know my problems, but I can tell you that through our data and through what we do, that's the furthest from the truth. In fact, what happens is you actually build stronger bonds with your customer base by humanizing the business. So it's incredibly important for you to use transparency as a marketing experience. I'll give you a quick example. We have a restaurant in Pearland, and we were coming on our first decade of business, right? Restaurant needed to remodel, reconcept, or close, right? We own the property, so we have the opportunity to do any of those things. And so what we decided to do was ultimately remodel the concept, right? But before we did that, we had an open dialogue on Facebook, on email, through texting, all of that, and had a letter from the owner letting them know about times being tough, our decision to remodel, why we decided to remodel, why we decided to reinvest in the community, what it meant to us. And this was like, when I'm talking about an open dialogue, this is a letter from the heart. This is not just, we decided to remodel. The amount of shares and comments and supports and emails, we received over 1,500 emails. On the comments, we received, I think, 600-700 comments. We had over 1,000 shares. Transparency during a time like this, a heartfelt, especially if times are tough for you right now. If things aren't going well, if you don't know you're going to remain open, if you're not really sure what to do, if you do need to raise your menu prices because you're losing money off selling brisket or whatever the case is, like, you do need to be honest about it and humanize your business. Don't talk about it as ABC Restaurant. Talk about it as the owner of the restaurant and what you're actually going through. And when we've advised our clients to do that, every single time, it's been a really great response. And the ties to the community have been strengthened. So, I just wanted to really reiterate that, because as far as marketing, that's gone really well.
Yeah, totally agree.
That's great. You guys nailed every point. Great suggestions. We have a question, Emily. Are there any resources or guidance on what to do if an employee does test positive for COVID-19?
Yes, and actually tonight, through, I think Philip knows, we send a nightly email and we sort of consolidate, we call one the source of truth, right? Because there's so much out there. The CDC came out just in the last 48 hours with their new guidelines, and in there is new guidance on what has to happen with an employee who tests positive. There's a lot of mistruths out there that you have to close for 14 days, you have to bring a special company in. None of that is true. And so I would bet maybe in the next 2 hours, you'll see it up on our website. If you go to txrestaurant.org, there's a COVID page and we'll post the new guidance. And then tonight I'll write about it. I think it's very fair. It keeps the public safe. It gives, we haven't really had guidelines. Each health department has had their own way of dealing with it, but that's really difficult when you operate restaurants over different counties, different cities. And so CDC sort of stepped in and said, this is the protocol. So we'll push that out tonight. We just got it. We're reading through it because we like to digest things, because most of our owners don't have time to read through pages and pages. So we'll post it tonight. But there is now official guidance that we would like everyone to follow when it comes to if you have an employee. And I would just be ready, because as testing starts to increase, you will have employees test positive. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when. And then how you handle it and how you choose to talk about it with your customer base is going to be probably some of the most decisions you have to make, but it shouldn't be some type of element that you hide from, or somehow that everyone is going to be ill in your place. I think it's one of the reasons why we stepped away and pushed very hard against some of the cities that wanted to put customer logs in place, right? And have customers have to leave all of their personal information, is that, that's not the path we want to go down. So we'll post this tonight and you're welcome to pull it down and use it as a resource.
Thank you.
Great.
That's incredible.
I did put the website, so everyone should be able to see that answer to that question, txrestaurant.org, that update. We had another question come in. What might you recommend focusing on for menu creation? We are a small cafe, coffee shop. We always made our own food from scratch, but now we are thinking of maybe going towards more pre-made or food for less handling.
I would ask if they're open for breakfast, because our breakfast concept especially has done really well during this time. Just because if you look, especially the third-party deliveries, there's not a lot of competition breakfast, and the lunch competition has been wiped out. A lot of full-service restaurants are not deciding to reopen for lunch, and a lot of full-service restaurants may not reopen. On the other side of things, I have a full-service restaurant, and we have not opened for lunch. So for a coffee shop example, I would take a look at breakfast and lunch, and again, test your items for portability.
And also don't be so quick to go to prepared, processed, et cetera. It sounds like if you're doing your hallmark maybe, or what people knew you for, is that homemade feeling. And there's nothing better right now than creating a sense of comfort. We're definitely seeing that as a trend. People miss restaurants. It's one of the top 3 things they miss the most about the shelter in place across the whole nation. But remember, this is not a foodborne illness. And so be very careful. Don't try to go through menu redesign because somehow less people involved in the process. This is not a foodborne illness. This is a respiratory illness. And so I wouldn't be too quick to go down the idea that you have to prepare things, that maybe come 40, 50% done to less handle, because really that's not the issue. So I would just be, and maybe Philip, this way he talks about it too, I think is sort of like, what is your brand? Why do customers come to you? Start with that question, see what that value is, and then back into that menu, because I would hate to see you make a change that maybe wouldn't sustain you long term, because then you just become like everyone else. And that's not where you want to be today in a market that's going to be fighting for customers with fewer, right? So I think that just want to make sure you don't make a quick decision. And I tell all of you, please, to make sure you keep having the conversation. This is not a foodborne illness, right? You will have just as much chance coming to dine with me as you will going to TJ Maxx that had 300 people in it over the weekend. And so I think we just got to keep telling that story, because restaurants are so easy to target because there's so many of us. And it's just an unfair contrast. We have to keep drawing that line in the sand that there is no difference. We keep people safe, that's what we do, and we're regulated by the health department, and now we've gone to a whole nother level to keep you safe in our dining rooms.
And I think to kind of piggyback on that, Emily, could you, for those that don't know on the call what the Texas Restaurant Promise is, or for people that are in other states, could you briefly explain to us what that is and the benefit to independent and chain restaurants?
Yeah, and so I'll start by saying you've probably seen the Connecticut Promise and the Illinois Promise, and my colleagues would not kill me for saying this, but many of them adopted what we did in Texas, which was fine, because if it's good work, you want to spread. But essentially what happened was we knew we'd come to a point when we were going to be able to open. And we also knew that our restaurants had no idea what to do, and we wanted to have one consistent set of rules. That was probably the most important, because when we started closing dining rooms, if you remember, cities were closing, individual towns were closing. We had this tracker of 160 counties we were trying to manage, and what we realized is we needed one set of rules. And so we assembled some of the top chain leaders, everything from Tillman and Pappas to Brinker and Darden, with some of our top independents, and we brought them all into a focus group and said, we're going to spend the next 2 weeks writing what the rules should be. We then went to the National Restaurant Association and pulled all their health experts to make sure we had a common set, and the whole idea is to have one set of minimal health protocols that everyone has to meet. And then if restaurants do want to go above or below, not below that, but above that, maybe they do want to have masks or whatever their customer base projects, but have one minimum standard. And so we were really pleased. Lieutenant Governor submitted that full report, and then Governor Abbott, we worked with his 3 restaurant members and created the Restaurant Promise, which then came out to be the new guidelines. And so we've really used that as a way for you to put on your door of your restaurant to not only do 2 things, say what you're going to do, and you're welcome to add additional elements, but also what the consumer is required to do. Believe it or not, a lot of the trouble we had this weekend was actually consumers not following the guidelines, not the restaurants. And you're putting our employees in a really tough place when you walk in and don't follow social distancing and don't follow the guidelines. And so now we take the promise, we redline it, and we send it back to the governor's office again saying, okay, now let's reduce these restrictions further, and this is what we'd like to see. And that's really the guidepost. I will say to you, one of the things that's really important is, how do you measure yourself? Philip had mentioned the idea of feeling safe in a restaurant, right? You're going to go, you're going to vote with your feet. And so we just signed an agreement actually this morning. We're going to have a third-party audit company who restaurants can work with for close to nothing, who is going to have the standards set by the state, and they will send people in like secret shopping programs, but the feedback goes only to you, right? And the whole idea is that your customers, we want them telling you if there's a mask or PPE issue, or if somebody was doing something they shouldn't do. We don't want that all over social media right now. It's almost unfair, right, to have all of that on the first 2 weeks all over social media. And so we'll have these guidelines, have an audit against it, feed all that back to the restaurant, and so they can keep getting better. And so it'll all be based off the promise, which will always match the governor's guidelines, which we don't think any state will change or not have protocols for at least 6 months, 6 to 9 months. We don't see these going away. I think you'll see a much more relaxed environment, but sanitizer in the front and back, spacing between tables of some sort. I think you'll see that for so many months ahead, that we want our restaurants to be able to audit against it without having to invest, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars across their restaurants. And so, yeah, we have about 17 states that have taken the promise concept, which is great to see.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. We had another question come in around third-party delivery, or not doing third-party delivery. Why not continue delivery to offset these higher third-party costs? Why are you guys not just doing it yourself?
Well, for me, this was the argument I made when we were first starting to look at third-party delivery. And the argument I made to our management team to bring it on was that a consumer that's using DoorDash is going to get their food from DoorDash. It doesn't matter if Mackenzie's is on there or not. They're going to use DoorDash. So if we're not on there available to that user, we're going to miss that sale. So that's why we've partnered with several different platforms. The other thing too, I would say is, that's kind of a myth out there, is that the rates are negotiable. And we have been able to negotiate a few of our rates down over time. And that's something that, will continue going on, just, trying to negotiate those down. But I think that's something that has been mislabeled, that, it's 30%, or, I mean, you can get them down, especially, using each, if you get one down, you can always go to the other one and say, well, I got this one down. So that's a strategy that we've used, and it's been successful for us.
Yeah, so we've done the same. The only thing that we've done also to really promote our delivery or our really in-store pickup, we decided not to do delivery because I'm not a logistics manager, right? I've got enough to deal with. I don't have enough employees as it is. I'm not going to be a logistics manager all of a sudden. So what we've done is we've actually heavily promoted for us to use our pickup service where you can come up and you pick up your own food, but where we give you a 15% discount. So, if you use our promo code, you can get 15% off. I think one time we did 20%. So we, instead of taking 28% or 30%, we're at least making more by you picking up from us. So we've tried to navigate people into using that. But the logistics thing, I turned it on. We use Toast. I know a lot of people use Toast. I turned it on. After one day, I turned it off, right? We had the person at the phone waiting. Then we had 3 orders. I had one guy. So I'm like, I'm not a Domino's here. So I turned it off, let them take care of it. And then we started using a promo code for customers to get a small discount to pick up their own food. And until I got people in the habit of doing it, then we turned it off after about 3 weeks, the promo code. And so that's one thing that we've done. But that's why we've stayed away from the delivery as well.
Great, yeah, makes sense. So we're kind of coming towards the end of our session here today. So if anyone does have any other questions, please don't hesitate to type them in so we can get all of those answered. We've had some really great interaction today. We've really covered a wide variety of topics that we kind of already planned to cover anyway, so that was great. If you guys have anything else that you want to share with the group, please do. And if not, I can go ahead and close us up and wait and see if we have any other questions come in.
Yeah, maybe I'll just jump in. I think one of the things we rolled out last week, the Texas Restaurant Survival Plan, which we feel really strongly about. And so we've got this federal money, and we know that restaurants got about 6% of it in Texas and maybe about 7% nationally, which is a very small amount of money. And with these fixes, we do believe if the pot is still there, there's about a quarter of it left that we will have other restaurants step in. But in general, that just helped them until June 30th today. And so we've gone to the governor, we put an 8-point plan together. It does include things like fee transparency and delivery. So we know that many cities now either have or are lining up to cap delivery fees 10%, 15%. In a state like Texas, that's going to be harder to do. And I agree. I think there's a place for third-party delivery, but when you get your bill with your essentially what you're going to earn, and there's so many things that have been deducted that you're unaware of, that's not acceptable, right? So there's certain things that we will go next year to legislature to mandate. I don't think capping, but I think transparency and making sure there's a signed agreement with the restaurant before is critical. We've asked for $390 million from the CARES funding that the state got. It's about $6 billion. We think $390 million for the second biggest industry in the state of Texas is a very fair ask. It'll be a lottery-based systems grants of $25,000, and restaurants can put it towards things like inventory, changing, for example, to make sure they have a delivery setup, right? But there's so many things our restaurants are going to have to do on a long term. It's going to be expensive and not currently covered by any funding mechanism whatsoever. And then we've asked for $1 million grant to build the training that's going to be required to make sure that restaurants have access to free training, to make sure they're compliant with whatever the standards are at that time, and not having to take on that burden. And there's 5 or 6 other points as well, including tax relief. Taxes, we've done a great job with the comptroller of getting them deferred, but they're going to come due. And so what can we do for tax relief long term, as well as any type of foreclosure protection, and even rent abatement in some cases if needed. We know there's a trickle down effect clearly in the chain, but we need to get these restaurants through it. And I think it was $40 billion last year in tax revenue we provided the state of Texas. So if we don't think it matters to save 700,000 jobs, we certainly, as an industry looking at the price of oil, know we have to save this industry. So I just encourage everyone who's listening, if you're in Texas, to please go to our Facebook page and write the governor. We make it as easy as pie. You just put your zip code in, send the email we already wrote for you. But that's my last request, because I think when you get a couple thousand of those, we sent about 80,000 notes to the comptroller when the crisis started in 24 hours. I was just so pleased with the work we did, but of course he was a little unhappy when you shut down the comptroller's email. but that's the kind of response we need, is that we need people to know that this money that the state is getting should be allocated to the sector that can hire people, produce a product, sell it, and get the economy moving. It shouldn't pad other non-economic engine entities. And so I just ask everyone to jump on board and help us with that fight, because our restaurants need it and they deserve it.
So we had a question on where to find that. I will send it with if you want to go ahead and tell them, and I will also send it with the follow-up as well.
Yeah, it's right on our Facebook page. So if you just go to the Texas Restaurant Association Facebook page, you'll see it kind of posted all over. Is it a bit.ly, how you say it? But it's a phone to action campaign, and literally you just send it, you put your name and address in, it'll send it to the governor here, but it's also your legislators who are in your zip code. And so we know they're hearing, because we're getting a lot of emails, and so we just got to keep pushing. This is a very long recovery, guys. This is not something that now that people are eating out again, that life is going to be grand. This is a sustained recovery over the next year. And just one last data point, it was 18 months post-Harvey that hit 60 counties, 54 counties on record. 18 months to get back to the pre-levels. And so there's winners and losers right now, right? There's some of our fast food folks have done fantastic with drive-through, and through this whole crisis, our mid-tiers are struggling, and our fine dining are gonna have a very tough recovery. And so we just need to get the industry through this, but it's gonna be a long road.
Thank you for sharing. I had a question if there's anything like that for restaurants in Indiana. Are you aware, Emily, if there is for Indiana?
I don't know. You can go to the Indiana Restaurant Association on their Facebook page or their website. I know they've been fighting a battle up there too. And so I can't imagine they wouldn't have. All of us have sort of put together the plan that works for our state. Our challenge, of course, is we're not in session. There's no legislature meeting. And so the governor has all the authority. So we're working through that channel here, but I believe you may still be in session or just came out, or could have a special session, which may be helpful.
Visit the Facebook page, the Restaurant Association page there. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. I really would like to thank you guys so much for being our panel today. There's been so much great insight you've all brought to the table, great discussions. Also would like to thank all of our participants that have been attending this session. On behalf of Gordon Food Service, we really do appreciate you getting on and also asking the questions, and just, here to help each other in this time. If anyone does have any other questions, you can always email our marketing team here locally in Texas by using this email on the screen right now, marketing-tx@gfs.com. We do have a local marketing team here in Texas that is here to help you, bring insights to you. We do plan to do another session similar to this. This was really valuable. So we'll definitely let you know when we have another session coming up. Thank you so much to our panel and to everyone on, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their afternoon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is that all?
That's it. Thank you so much. All right. I'm ending the recording. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.